the sailor boys in blue, winter ship destroyers, submarine annoyers.
World War I, the Select Service Act was passed on May 1917, authorized a draft of young men in the military service in Europe. On the first day, June 5, 1917, more than 9.6 million Americans registered for the draft and were assigned a number. Great migration was many African Americans referred to the North. At the time, African Americans left their homes from the South for many reasons, like to escape the violent racism of the South, and others desired better jobs and chance for economic advantage. 14 points was the nature of the conflict by outlining Americans' war arms. For the heart of the 14 points was the idea of peace without victory. Legend of Nations was secure, mutual guarantee of political independence and territorial integration to others, like great and small states alike. The Roaring Twenties, scientific management hired experts to improve his mass production techniques. The Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, a group formed in the South during the African Americans who sought out to vote who terrorized them. The quota system, a governed immigration of specific countries. The flapper was a young woman in short skirt and rough cheeks who has her hair chopped close, and the style was close to a bob. The Lost Generation was Americans writers of the 1920s who became no longer had faith in cultural guideposts in the Victorian era. Great Depression, Black Tuesday, October 29th. The bottom fell out, the stock markets collapsed, and more than 16 million shares were sold. Harley-Smoot tariff raised prices on foreign imports such as a level that they couldn't complete for the American market. The bread line was only place for a family to get free scraps of food, where people lined up for handouts, formed in charities or public agencies. Hoovervilles were makeshift shaggy towns of tents and shack built on public land or vacant lots. Dust Bowl was dust storms started in the southern Great Plains, especially a high plains regions of Texas, like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, and Colorado. New Deal, fireside chats. President Roosevelt delivered on an informal radio speech to the American people. The Public Works Administration, which built bridges, dams, power plants, and government buildings, used respectively for building many important projects still used today. The Social Security Act, that Congress used for unemployment and insurance for workers who had lost their jobs, also to create insurance for the victims of work-related accidents, and provided aid for poverty-stricken mothers and children, blind and disabled. Collective bargaining, that employers had to negotiate with unions about hours, wages, and other work conditions. Black Cabinet was the president's invitation to many African American leaders to advise him. World War II, the Battle of Midway was the turning point in the war in the Pacific, ending the seamlessly unstoppable Japanese offense. The Executive Order of 8802 measured the assurance of fair hiring practices of any job funding with the government money, and established a fair employment practices community enforces the requirements. D-Day, the Allies that hit Germany in force on June 6, 1944, more than 11,000 planes prepared in the way attempting to destroy Germany's communism and communication and transportation network and soften Nazi beaches defense.
Going through a party in the county jail. The prison man was there and they began to wail.
60s, fair deal of rating a legislation program. The Interstate Highway Act, which authorized the funds to build 41,000 miles of highway consisting of multiple lane expressways connecting to nation's major cities. Consumerism began to boom, and Americans were buying much as they could, much as they can, on credit. Elvis Presley would listen to Memphis radio station and was played African American gospel tunes, and he began to integrate those tunes into the music he played. Rock and roll played and seemed for a cultural revolution that blossomed the 1950s.
I love my baby. She makes me oh so blue.
Cold War Marshall Plan provided the valid example of the U.S. aid could serve an end of both economic and foreign policy. 88th parallel, a dividing line, is the 88th parallel of latitude. Southeast Asia Territory Organization was a defense of allies armed and preventing a spread of communism. The Red Scare was the fear of communists both outside and inside America were working to destroy American life. The Smith Act was to cripple the Communist Party in the United States, made unlawful to teach and advocate the violent overthrow the United States government.
My baby. She makes me oh so blue. But you won't just come go home with me.
Rights. Rosa Parks, an African-American seamstress, boarded a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and sat down in an empty bus seat. Several stops later, the bus driver requested her to give up her seat for a white passenger. The Montgomery, Alabama law required blacks to give up their seats for the whites. Student Nonviolent Coordination Community, the SNCC, is a goal that was created to grassroots in the movement that involved all classes of African Americans in the struggle to defeat the white racism to obtain equality. The March on Washington drew 200,000 people to Washington, D.C. to demonstrators that were divided into groups and parts of all over the country. Filibuster. This was a tactic which senators give long speeches and to hold legislative business. Tom Moore, the South Asian Treaty Organization, was the goal of containing the spread of communism in South Asia. Viet Cong was the nation's liberal nation's front guerrilla fighters that were launched on insurgency in which they assassinated the government officials and destroyed roads and buildings. Napalm was a jelly-like gasoline in which was dropped in large canisters that exploded in impact, covering large areas in flames. The tentative offense was after the Vietnamese Lunar New Year was the coordinated assault on the 36 Providence capitals and 5 major cities, as well as the United States Embassy in Saigon. The Pentagon Papers was the term reference to classify government history and Americans' involvement in the Vietnam, and the study was leaked to the New York Times. Culture was the generation gap. There was lack of understanding and communications between older and younger generations. Feminism, the social and economic equalities of men and women. Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, the amendment that to the Constitution that would guarantee gender equality under law.
Whisper soft and true, darling, I love